90 missiles landed. Then came the list nobody expected. I'm Kane Shimatsuka, and what I witnessed in the hours after that barrage tells me we've crossed into territory the Pentagon never wargamed. Because Iran didn't just strike Israeli military infrastructure. They published the names of 6 American tech giants and called them legitimate targets. And before you dismiss this as empty rhetoric, let me show you why every defense analyst I know is treating this as the opening move of something far worse. Here's what happened. Iran launched 90 ballistic missiles at Israeli territory in a single coordinated strike. Not scattered attacks over days. One massive volley. Israeli Arrow and David's sling systems intercepted most of them, but not all. Several warheads reached their targets. The IDF confirmed hits near military installations in southern and central Israel. Damage assessments are still being compiled, but this wasn't symbolic. This was kinetic warfare with real impact. That barrage alone would have dominated headlines for a week. But within hours, Iran's Tasnim news agency, the IRGC's semi-official mouthpiece, released something that had nothing to do with missiles. They published a list: Google, Microsoft, Nvidia, IBM, Oracle, Palantir, 6 names. And next to those names, a statement declaring their offices, data centers, and cloud infrastructure across Israel and the Gulf region are now legitimate military targets. Now, I need you to understand something critical here. Threats get issued constantly in modern conflict. Most of them never materialize. Publishing a list through a news agency is not the same as launching an operation. I'm not here to sell you fear. I'm here to show you patterns. And the pattern forming right now is one I've been tracking for years in closed intelligence circles, and it's finally breaking into the open, because this wasn't Iran's first move against tech infrastructure. Before this list was published, before the 90 missile barrage, Iranian drones struck Amazon Web Services data centers in the UAE and Bahrain. Not hypothetically, actually struck them. The Uptime Institute confirmed it, calling it the first military attack on a hyperscale cloud provider in modern warfare history. AWS reported structural damage. Fire suppression systems activated inside server rooms. Major Gulf platforms, ride-sharing apps, payment systems, banking services went offline for days. But here's what didn't make headlines. The outages cascaded. One data center failure triggered failover protocols that overwhelmed backup systems. Cloud-dependent services across 3 countries experienced degraded performance even after primary systems came back online. Recovery time measured in days, not hours. And the total economic cost of those outages, according to preliminary industry estimates, exceeded $500 million. From drones that probably cost Iran less than what a single F-35 sortie burns in fuel, that's the asymmetry nobody wants to talk about, Iran spent pocket change. The damage cost more than some countries' annual defense budgets. And they proved the concept works. So when the IRGC names Google and Microsoft as next, analysts aren't dismissing it as propaganda. They're looking at capability plus intent. And both variables just tested positive. Iran demonstrated they can reach these facilities. They demonstrated they're willing to hit them. That's not speculation anymore. That's doctrine. But here's the question everyone's missing. Why these 6 companies specifically? This is where it gets uncomfortable for people who still think Silicon Valley is a civilian industry. Every single company on that list holds active contracts with the US military or intelligence community. Microsoft Azure runs classified Pentagon cloud computing. Palantir builds data analytics for special operations targeting. Nvidia chips power AI systems processing military satellite imagery. Oracle hosts classified government databases. IBM provides enterprise infrastructure to intelligence agencies. Google Cloud operates under defense contracts. Its own employees have been protesting for years. Iran's stated reasoning, and I'm presenting their argument here, not endorsing it, is that these companies have erased the line between civilian business and military operations. They're calling them dual-use infrastructure. And under that framework, they're arguing these facilities are legitimate under their interpretation of armed conflict. Now, international law scholars will debate this for decades. The principle of distinction is supposed to protect civilian infrastructure. But we're in genuinely uncharted legal and strategic territory because the integration between commercial tech and military operations has never been this deep or this geographically exposed. And that exposure is what should terrify you. Google's Middle East headquarters sits in Dubai. Microsoft committed $3 billion to Abu Dhabi data center expansion. Oracle and Nvidia have been building Gulf infrastructure as part of a regional AI build-out. These aren't hidden bunkers. They're glass towers in major cities surrounded by shopping malls, hotels, residential neighborhoods. All of it was constructed under an assumption that commercial infrastructure in Allied territory was untouchable. That assumption just evaporated. In January of this year, the U.S. announced the Paki Silica Initiative, a formal tech partnership with the UAE and Qatar designed to anchor American AI and cloud infrastructure in the Gulf. The goal was strategic positioning. Keep advanced semiconductors and cloud servers close to U.S. allies, far from Chinese competitors. Security frameworks focused heavily on export controls, chip tracking, preventing technology transfer to Beijing. But based on publicly available documentation, the planning assumption that these buildings themselves could become military targets in a regional war, that scenario doesn't appear to have been central to contingency models. That's not criticism. That's observation about how fast the environment shifted. And here's where the economics get brutal. Since this conflict started, global equity markets have lost trillions in valuation. Oil spiked, shipping costs surged, but most financial models treated the AWS strikes as a contained event. Damage absorbed, workloads rerouted, services restored. The published IRGC list destroys that containment narrative. If attacks expand to additional tech infrastructure, market response won't be gradual. Algorithmic trading reacts to risk signals in milliseconds. You don't need a missile to actually hit Microsoft's building for the stock to move. You need investors to believe the risk is credible, and credibility just got established with the AWS precedent. There's a secondary signal here that matters strategically. The IRGC list names American companies exclusively. It doesn't name Huawei, Alibaba Cloud, or other Chinese tech firms operating in the Gulf. Whether that's deliberate messaging or just reflects Iran's stated grievances, the effect is identical. It creates a perceived risk differential. American tech infrastructure is under military threat. Chinese infrastructure operates without interference. Gulf states that have spent a decade balancing Washington and Beijing relationships are watching one side of that equation come under fire, while the other remains untouched. That's observable market geometry. Every sovereign wealth fund manager in the region is recalculating right now. So can the U.S. actually defend these facilities? Honestly, it's more complicated than any confident yes or no answer. Gulf states and U.S. forces have deployed air defense systems, Patriot batteries, THAAD, other platforms designed to intercept exactly these threats. But there's a fundamental asymmetry analysts keep pointing to. Advanced interceptors cost millions per shot. The drones and lower-tier missiles Iran deploys cost a fraction of that. In sustained campaigns, you're burning premium defensive resources, protecting commercial buildings against cheap offensive weapons, while your interceptor stockpiles are simultaneously being drawn down by broader military operations. Let me give you the actual math, because this is where the trap gets visible. A PAC-3 MSE interceptor runs about $4 million per round. A THAAD interceptor costs roughly $12 million. Iran's Shahed 136 drones cost approximately $35,000 to manufacture. That's a 100-to-1 cost ratio minimum. If Iran launches 10 drones at a Google data center and you intercept all 10, you just spent $40 million defending a building. Iran spent $350,000 attacking it. Run that equation over weeks of sustained operations, and the defender's magazine empties long before the attacker's inventory does. One infrastructure researcher said it bluntly: it's cheaper to attack than defend. That's not ideology, that's economics. Now, to be fair, Iran is absorbing massive damage from U.S. and Israeli airstrikes. Their military infrastructure, industrial capacity, civilian areas, all under sustained bombardment. Their ability to maintain offensive operations against Gulf tech infrastructure while absorbing that punishment is not guaranteed. Military capability on paper versus capability under sustained attack are very different calculations. Here's what I don't know, and what nobody outside classified briefing rooms knows right now: whether the IRGC list represents a concrete operational plan or psychological warfare designed to pressure markets and create diplomatic leverage. Both are plausible. We don't know Iran's current drone and missile inventory after weeks of conflict. We don't know full air defense deployments around commercial infrastructure in the Gulf, and we don't know what private conversations are happening between these tech companies and the Pentagon about evacuation planning. What I do know is this: the AWS strikes already occurred. The list has been published. The named companies have billions in physical infrastructure sitting in cities within demonstrated range of Iranian weapons. And the assumption that commercial tech in allied territory is safe just collapsed. Watch for public statements from Google, Microsoft, others on that list about Gulf operations. Any announcement about relocating staff, pausing construction, shifting workloads, signals corporate risk assessments fundamentally changed. Watch oil markets and the Hormuz situation. Watch insurance markets. Reinsurance pricing for Gulf commercial infrastructure will tell you more than any press release. And watch diplomacy. Every day discontinues, economic damage compounds. Eventually the cost of fighting exceeds the cost of negotiating. But there's something else I'm tracking that should concern anyone paying attention to where this conflict is actually heading. The tech companies on that list aren't just passive targets. They're active participants in a military-industrial architecture that most people don't see because it operates in classified spaces and behind corporate PR departments. When Palantir's software processes targeting data for drone strikes, when Microsoft's cloud runs logistics for carrier strike groups, when Nvidia's chips enable autonomous weapons systems, these companies aren't neutral parties selling products. They're embedded in the kill chain. Iran knows this. China's watching how this plays out. And every adversary with the capability to reach commercial infrastructure is studying the precedent being set right now. The assumption that kept Silicon Valley safe was geographic distance and the fiction of civilian status. Both just evaporated in the Persian Gulf. And once that assumption breaks in one theater, it breaks everywhere. Because if American tech infrastructure is targetable in Dubai, it's targetable in Singapore, in Seoul, in Taipei, anywhere the hardware sits within range and the strategic calculation shifts. I don't know how this ends. What I know is a conflict described as short-term is now threatening physical infrastructure of companies that run the modern economy. That's not fear. That's the ground truth today. And the storm approaching is bigger than most people realize. Because when the invisible architecture holding the digital world together becomes a battlefield, the collapse won't announce itself with sirens. It'll just stop working. And by then, it's already too late. I'm Kane Shimatsuka, and I'm watching what nobody wants to see.